Hi, I'm Deb Sirman. Welcome to our garden. It's been many years since our garden has been on tour. We used to do it many times with Greenland, and so we've switched it up this year where we're doing virtual garden tours, and I'm more than happy to share what we've done in the past 25 years in our yard. This yard has been a work in action. It is certainly not a pretentious yard. It is a yard for children, dogs, kids, of all sorts. We've had many generations go through here of animals as well as children, from my young children now into a grandchild. So you'll see as we go through, it's actually not a yard that's very fussy, but certainly my biggest compliment is people come and say, oh, it's so comfortable in your yard. So I just want to share it with you. So we're in the front yard here, and I think one of the most important things in a front yard is actually to have some sound greeting your guests. And so we've just put a small water feature in there. It's a little burble. You could do it in many different ways. You can just buy a small feature. This is basically something that we often sell at Greenland, where we have a rock with a hole through it, a pump underneath, and all the water is doing is recirculating. So as we come up to the yard, we have several different plants that I can't go through individually. You'll see that the focus for me is not so much color. Like many people, I'm more into texture. So it's many times it's purples, blues, whites, as well as the vibrancies of chartreuses in many plants. What we have in front of the window is a good example of making sure you pre-plan. I wanted to have hydrangea in the front window. It is facing east, and hydrangea will grow in part shade to semi-sun locations. But with this hydrangea, it said 3 to 4 feet. Well, it's erring on the side of high caution and getting a little bit too high for my windows. So what I really recommend is that if you are planning to put shrubs in a certain area, really do look into how tall it's going to get, because there's certain varieties that will only go 3 feet, some that will go 6 feet. In this case, I can't prune them back because I want to get the blooms, but they are a little bit too tall for me, and 3 of them have filled in intensely. They were only maybe 2 feet wide when we first planted them. One of my favorite things in the yard is a weeping Norway spruce. I love evergreens because we have 8 months of usually no sun, no summer. So to have evergreens in a yard, I think, is very, very important. And I really do like the unusual ones. I haven't gone near as far as Bob has, but this one is actually one that's incredibly hardy. It is a weeping Norway spruce. It only gets about this tall, and it weeps down over this retaining wall. So it kind of, gives me some color all season long. Again, we've talked about the hydrangeas. There's many, many varieties of it. And what I've done this year for the first time is interspersed more annuals. I normally go only perennials. I will go with variegated hostas, again, chartreuses. I've used a golden barberry, and in the back I've got some bugbane. But the annuals in this area are just basically a wave petunia, and I always felt like there was kind of a gap during the summer in between the blooming times on my perennials. So I added them in and they just filled it in. I've also added this beautiful annual Gora, which usually is in a little bit more bloom, but we've had not a whole lot of sun this summer, and it certainly has added some color into the front area for the full summer. To me, having a front entrance that is inviting to guests and even just to enjoy yourself is really important. And I do change it up a bit, wherein I don't only use annuals in pots. Many years what I'll do is use an evergreen or something, for example, like a palm in a large pot, and then it can stay in there all season long. If you have the inclination, you certainly can bring it in for the winter. We've got a little bit of mezzu beneath it just to spill over the pot, but evergreens and palms or tropicals are very, very easy to take care of and give you a really, really strong focal point in a pot. In our area here, I have used a mixture of tropicals and annuals. So in our large pots, in the large black pots, I've used the golden sedum, some phlox, some salvia, and then cypress, which is a really, really hardy annual that you can also use in water gardens. On this side over here, I've switched it up a little bit where I've actually used a golden dracaena, which is a tropical, and that size of pot is very easy to take in for the winter. So you can mix it up. It's a very dark entrance because we have covering over here and we also are facing east. So at nighttime, it's nice when we're inviting guests over because that gold gives it a pop of color. In this small bed right here, I have used evergreens, and these are dwarf Alberta spruce. They're relatively inexpensive, and so what I do is I put them in here, and then I will pull out the annuals from there for the fall time once they freeze, and these little spruce will stay green up until February and March. And I use it as an annual, but truly it does stay in my yard almost 12 months out of the year. So it won't live here from year to year because it's in such a small contained space, and dwarf Alberta spruce do need special coverings. But for me, the investment is worth it. They're not an expensive plant and they give me color all year round. Now let's go over to our side yard. So we're in our side yard right now, and I think it's an area in many yards that people actually tend to forget about how much you actually see it. When we were designing this yard 25 years ago, I knew that this pathway leading from the front yard to the back would be used all the time. So it was really important to me to make sure that we had some beauty in this area. Because it is very close in between two homes, it actually has created a microclimate in this area. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to grow some things that are more in a zone 5 location as opposed to 3 or 4, which is usually the case in Edmonton. So in this area, it is extremely shaded. And although it's not wet, I have tried to create a Vancouver type Stanley Park look in there. So it's right by a hose. It's easy for me to recreate. So what I've done in this area is done a collection of many different ferns. Over the years, I've tried countless ones. Some of them have continued to grow, of course, the basic ostrich ferns. I've done lady ferns and all painted ferns, all sorts of them. And you know what? I've just enjoyed the challenge of keeping them going. So this year was a hard year on plants. 2020 was a hard year on everything, I think. And I did lose quite a few ferns, so I've replaced them. And it just gives me a chance to try something else. The other thing I have in this yard that often is not found are rhododendrons, and even though we do have the PJM that are considered relatively hardy in the Alberta area, these are more zone 5. They're called Nova Zembla, and we had full pink blossoms on them this year without having any type of mulching. When they were younger and small, I used to put covering over them and throw mulch on them, but they just got bigger, and I said, well, whatever happens, happens, and they've adapted very well to this area. So as you can see, this area kind of is a nice greeting. It has to have shade plants in this area, hydrangeas, hostas, and a lot of other things because we get very little sun, but it is an area that actually is one of my favorite parts of the garden. I find it very calming. One of the things that I use the most in a garden that a lot of people don't have is my little garden bench. It looks very simple, but it holds all of my stuff that I need. Of course, my basics, my kelp, which I use almost every time I water. I just give a squirt. Root boosters always on my list because I seem to always be planting something, as well as my garden bandit, which I've talked about in a previous video. And certainly it's the best weeder that you can get. But if you can make room to put all of your things within a garden bench, I mean, I put my water wands here, I store stuff inside, I've got my favorite dram sprinkler down there. It does sort of keep everything all together, and I don't have to keep on running into the garage. As we move towards our backyard, you'll see in our tour that we have a lot of very old trees. Many of them were planted 25 years ago, but at that time they were still 6 or 8 feet tall. And it was a hard decision for us on some of them whether or not we should maintain them and keep them because we love the privacy and we love how they attract birds. But because the root systems are so big, it is a little bit harder to keep plants growing underneath them. So I've tried to keep a balance. We've pruned back some, we've removed the odd one, but in the end, to me, the most important thing is just having our backyard feel like it's not in the city and that it is private. So I've chosen to keep a lot of the trees intact, and in return I've given up a lot of heavy plantings underneath just because it seems too hard to keep up. Over the years, we also have replanted many times, and that's something that I think people don't realize you have to do. So in a new yard, it's great when you have all new soil and new area to plant in, but as it gets older, some plants will require a lot of extra care, and sometimes they'll get outgrown. And you have to make those decisions whether or not they're worth keeping or not. You don't just landscape once. It evolves and it happens over the years. And so if you saw our yard 20 years ago, maybe it is different, but there are some key things that are definitely still the same. The one thing I do back here is always use strong focal pots around our deck. When we have nice weather, we really do enjoy using the deck. It's been kind of a rare occasion, so anytime that we can, we're out here. I use a lot of tropicals in my pots because I just feel that they give you that feeling of tropical right away. So just basically any type of palm, and then the fillers beneath it that are endless when it comes to annuals. You can use annual grasses and other things in order to make them look spectacular. In this case, I've used some phlox, some mesu, and another beautiful annual grass. So I think that we're going to just move on just a little bit more. As I mentioned before, our backyard is a place where it's for children, it's for dogs, it's for family, and it's just a spot that I want to have a bit of a recluse in, which is kind of ironic because of working at Greenland and working so many hours. It's hard to get in the garden and actually enjoy it because as soon as I sit down, I want to go and start doing something with the plants. But it is still a relaxing area that we do certainly enjoy. And in this area, I've really switched it up, where in the past it was bursting with many, many pots of annual flowers. Over the years, having too many pots I realized was too much work. It took me too much time of pinching and deadheading annuals. And my value for vegetables has become higher and higher. So I've done a lot of planting within pots within my garden. This is a tomato tomato that I grow every year. Literally will get hundreds and hundreds of the crispiest grape tomatoes. And so it's not a hard choice for me to decide whether or not I'm going to be picking fresh tomatoes and enjoy it with my basil that's on my deck. We also have this one over here, which is actually similar to San Marzano. It's the Health Kick, and it's going to be hopefully giving us some tomatoes within the next few weeks. Normally we'd have a lot of color by the end of July, but our sunshine has just not been plentiful enough, and we've had a bit too much rain in Edmonton for things to be producing. I also have eggplant and many other, like dill. I have rosemary, mint, chives, all growing in pots all around the garden. Our water garden is original. I still enjoy the sounds of it, and certainly I know a lot of people have gone to the easier way of doing it by just setting something in place, but the water garden was something we did originally. Even though we had children, it was something important to me to drown out the sounds of the city. So here we are in the main area of the backyard, which again has evolved over the years. But we've kept the grass. We've gone from having children who played soccer here to dog after dog, and now we've gone full circle where we have another large dog as well as a granddaughter who loves the grass. So I know there's a lot of people who say I don't like maintaining it, but I have found that in us having it, it has created a play space and an enjoyable space for our family for sure. Within our garden in the back, we have a lot of very, very mature trees, and it has turned into almost a full shade garden. And so I've had to plan very strategically as to how to plant things, because obviously sun-loving perennials do not enjoy it in a shaded spot. So this little bit of the garden does get quite a bit of sun, so I've certainly tried to take advantage of it with some matricaria. Daylilies are always an enjoyable thing to have in the garden. Even just the foliage is really nice, as well as they give you these beautiful bright blossoms every day. And then even some tiger lilies just popped in there for a real strong pop of color. Again, I normally stick to whites and purples, but every now and then the pinks and the yellows just sort of liven up the garden. One of my favorite plants that is an original is actually our Goldilocks elder. Again, this was one that I thought was only going to get 3 or 4 feet. And this spring it looked so haggard because we had such a hard winter. I pruned it right back to about maybe about 4 or 5 feet tall, and it's come into this beautiful flush where actually it needs another good pruning. I'm not afraid to prune shrubs all season long to keep them within their kind of height that they should be. But this Goldilocks elder is the closest thing we have to foliage that looks almost like a red Japanese maple, but it's golden. And that soft feathery foliage is something that I've always enjoyed. Beside it is actually a hardy, non-hardy magnolia. It's a zone 4 and it's called the star magnolia. It's a little bit difficult to see, and it is probably over 20 years old too. It took a pretty good hit this year, so it's not looking like it normally does with full foliage. But it still lived in a year when many things didn't, so I'm pretty pleased. My back garden is very shaded, so the choices of plants usually have to be something for shade or part sun. I've tried to pop in some color in there. Some of the daisies actually do go in a part shade area. Salvia is the same thing, where they will actually go in a part shade area, but mostly it's things like hostas. Rodgersia that has a huge leaf on it got pummeled with hail just a week or 2 ago, so now it's called a holy Rodgersia. But Ligularia, we also have, I've got several hydrangeas within the yard because those are all very good in the shaded area. The final part of our garden is the part that we use the most, and it's our patio. We redid this patio probably about 8 years ago, and instead of using a wood product, we did it in a stone base, which has actually made our lives much easier because it's so easy to just scrub or hose off. We also added wood fire. It actually is a wood burning pizza oven, and it can go up to 700 degrees. But what I like about it is that we actually use the fire to warm our area. Our deck, we put a glass cover on it so that if it's a July evening, which like today is raining, sunny, windy, raining, sunny, we still can sit outside here because we are covered on the top, as well as getting a little bit heat from the fireplace, and as well as some ambiance. So I think that what's the most important is when you're planning your deck, plan it for what you think your family's needs are. We have a lot of friends and family visit us, so I wanted a lot of very comfortable seating areas, as well as a table that would fit at least 6 people. I actually found the round one fits in here way better than what a large rectangular one is. But this is an area that I don't want to ever dismiss as being non-important, because it is the area that we enjoy the most of the whole garden. So I want to thank you for coming, enjoying the virtual garden tour. I hope that you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, please always give us a call at Greenland. We're more than happy to answer them.